Hello and welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. This is Coach Sarah, and today I want to talk all about travel racing. 'Tis the season, right? It is the start of September. I feel like we have a bunch of majors and bigger races coming up. I think a lot of us have like our A goal race of the season in the next few months, and many of you might be traveling to that race, or you might be traveling to a tune-up, or this could be something that maybe you listen to now and it applies to you in 2026 as you get into more travel racing. I know we are in a running boom right now, which is so exciting to see. It's so exciting to see not only so many people running and training, but also racing, that races are selling out faster than ever before. And it's something that I've communicated with my team quite a bit over the summer is if you're thinking about running a race, please sign up for it. We have a huge team going to Chicago this year. We have a huge team going to CIM and a really big team going to Houston. And Houston is in its last pricing tier and it's only September 2nd, which is wild. So that race is going to sell out here quickly. So I'm really encouraging all of my athletes that I coach to like sign up for those races. Let's commit to it and have a lot of fun in the process as we make our way through the training cycle into race day. But, something I do hear from athletes quite often is kind of the anxiety that can come up from travel racing, which I get. As someone who lives at altitude, I have travel raced really since 2019 and beyond, or since 2019 when I got into marathoning. My very first marathon was in California, and some of my tune-up races or some of my races in that season of training, I think I raced 5 times in that 3-4 month window of time, which was absolutely wild. Most of those races were travel races. I love travel racing. I think it's a really cool opportunity to see a new area of the country. It's a really great opportunity to kind of lean into maybe a course that really supports you and your strengths as a runner. And maybe it's a course that really allows you to tap into your potential. As someone who lives at altitude, and I think a lot of us can relate. Maybe you live in a really warm weather climate, you live at altitude, you live in a really hilly climate. It can be a little intimidating to race locally. I know this spring I was really in a season of wanting to stay local, to race local. I wanted to race more often. And I thought, gosh, if I am racing 5Ks and 10Ks more often than not, I think I had 4 or 5 lined up. Eventually there were about, I think, 9 on the schedule. And I ended up not doing the second half of that race season because of my foot injury, but that's a lot of travel racing. If I were to say I'm going to go to lower elevation, I'm going to go to the Midwest, which I seem to race really well in the Midwest, Chicago, Indianapolis, go over to the East Coast and tap into some of those really fast courses like the BAA 5K, the McCurdy 10K. Those were all kind of part of the original plan. And then that plan shifted and changed into more local races. But gosh, I had a really hard time racing locally because it's at altitude and racing threshold or 10K effort at altitude, racing 5K effort at altitude is really tough because on any given day, sometimes that pace comes in at half marathon pace or effort, or I guess it would be pace, but the effort's 5K. Sometimes it comes in at marathon pace. So it's quite humbling. So I'm always a big believer in like traveling when I can, but there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to travel racing. So I want to talk about those today, especially if you're in a season of wanting to have performance gains, if you're in a season of wanting to travel, to experience new races, new courses, new environments. This is the podcast episode for you. So I want to kick this off and let's talk about what to consider before even signing up for a travel race. I have some athletes right now who are like, I don't even know if I should be travel racing to Houston or to Mesa or to Eugene. I don't know if that's something I should be doing. These are the things that you want to think about before even booking that flight or before even signing up for that race. First and foremost, you want to review your running values. Now, this is something a little bit more inside baseball to the Elevate Your Running team. And I have mentioned running values on the podcast a few times. And these are values that align with your running. And it's something that I really encourage the team to review yearly. It's something that I have for myself as an athlete. And, I have to say at the very beginning of the year, looking back now in hindsight, like at the very first half of the year, I should say, through July, my running values and how I showed up to training were vastly different. Vastly different. And I wasn't having fun and I was stressed and I didn't want to be doing everything that I was doing. So I think this is like so important to have those running values. And if running seems to be feeling different in not in a positive way, maybe realigning on those running values and making sure, one, are those still your running values? And then two, maybe it's time to revamp those running values. I 1000% know my running values have shifted a little bit and my running goals have shifted a little bit. And I'll talk more about that after the fall season, depending on what I decide to race and what I decide to do. But it's okay that running values change. I think it's really important that they do change because as we grow and evolve as athletes, our running values should shift and mold and flex to who we are as athletes and what we're going after when it's all said and done. So make sure your running values are intact and see how that aligns with this travel race that you're looking to do. And then you want to research and make sure that travel racing to this particular location or this destination is the right fit. So you want to think about the financial aspects, which are, it's a pretty big component to travel racing. It's not just signing up for the race, but you want to think about the hotel accommodations. Staying closer to the start line is always more convenient, but it also means that you're most likely spending more money on a hotel room. And I have to say that it's almost like going to a wedding because these hotels are priced at max price. Like it is a surge. It is pure economy 101 or economics 101, supply versus demand. These hotel rooms are expensive. So be prepared to pay $500, $600, $700, $800 a night for a hotel room, especially if you're going to a pretty big race destination. You'll also want to think about your flight. You'll want to think about how many days you're spending at this location. And I'm a big believer in giving yourself an extra day at the location before you race. Back when I was younger, I was able to like fly in the day before a race the next day and like race really well. And now as a master's runner and as someone who really feels, I guess, maybe a bit more of the effects of traveling or being on a flight for 3-ish hours plus the travel there to the airport and from the destination airport to the hotel and to the expo and all the things. It doesn't leave a lot of extra time for downtime. That's something that I definitely need the older that I get. So think about all of that, how many hotel nights you'll need. Thinking about the travel to the airport, to the hotel, and around the city as you make your way around race weekend. And then also eating out, restaurants. Maybe you need to buy recovery gear. Maybe you want to buy things at the expo. Factor this all in. What makes this so much fun is if you end up going with friends or family, like usually there's a component where you can split the cost of a hotel room or maybe some of the transportation once you get there. And that makes it a little bit more feasible for someone who is maybe travel racing throughout the year. And when you go to majors, I would say major marathons are the most expensive. Traveling internationally obviously is going to be expensive, but for me, going to the Boston Marathon in 2023, I joked that it was like 3 days in Boston was the cost of like 10 days in Europe for me. It was so much money. I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to go to the Boston Marathon for 3 days. It was insane. And it's one of the reasons why I don't want to go back right now. For me, it just doesn't make sense. So it's really thinking about the financial aspects to this race as they align with your running values and what you want to get out of it. Next up is going to be life aspects. So, anytime we're planning an A goal race, I think it's really important to think about life. And obviously, life is going to throw a lot of curveballs at us, whether we want them or not, whether we think they're in our best interest or not. But it is going to happen because it is life, but doing your best to kind of navigate around this. So if you know you are moving around the time of an A goal race, maybe shift that A goal race to next year and find something else that makes sense for this season in life, because what we know to be true about moving is that it's really stressful. Starting a new job is really stressful. Going through relationship changes is really stressful. Now, sometimes kind of you kind of see it coming. You kind of know what is happening, especially if you're in the housing market and you want to buy a new house. Like, that is typically 100% in your control. Job changes, relationship changes aren't always 100% in your control. And sometimes it can be something that takes you quite off guard. Maybe you lose your job unexpectedly. Maybe a relationship ends unexpectedly. And so those things you can't necessarily control, but you can adjust and pivot and decide, do I still want to do this race or do I not want to do this race? Because I have a lot of extra stress going on in life. And what we know to be true about stress in life, whether it's job change, moving, relationship changes, family dynamic changes, is that it's stress. And anytime we have a lot of stress and we have training stress, that can be the perfect storm of an injury to pop up. And that's the last thing we want. So really thinking through your life aspects and what's going on during this time is going to be crucial. Now, you also want to think about the travel logistics. How easy or how difficult is it to get to the start of this race once you get to the destination? So I mentioned earlier at the start of this podcast, I was signed up for the McCurdy K. I actually wasn't signed up for it, but like maybe mentally I was signed up for it. My coach knew about it. I was supposed to go out there with a friend, and it was in New York, but it was outside of New York. It was in like upstate New York-ish. But all I remember is once my friend backed out of going, and I thought, okay, I still want to do this. The course is still supposed to be super fast. It's also supposed to be a competitive 10K. So that's going to feel really good. Being able to be around other people when I race, which I typically end up in like no woman's land. I'm like, I'm not running with anyone, and that can be a really difficult place to be. So I thought this could be a really cool 10K to race, and maybe like, it's at lower elevation. The weather should be good. It's a flat course. I know other people who are going. This could be a really fun, fast 10K and kind of give me a little bit of confidence going into what was supposed to be my Chicago Marathon build, kind of starting in mid-July. But once I looked at how to fly into this area of New York, and then I looked at how far away the airport was to the nearest hotel closest to the start line, it was a logistical nightmare. I couldn't get a direct flight. The drive from the airport to the hotel, I believe, was about 2 hours. The hotel to the start line was another 30 minutes. And I'm like, this is insane to do for a 10K. Like, I am going to spend, I think the 10K was on a Sunday. I'm going to spend my entire Friday traveling. And then Saturday, I'm going to be holed up in a hotel in the middle of nowhere waiting to race this 10K. And then I go in and race the 10K. And then I have a full day of travel back to Boulder. It just didn't make sense to me. It seemed exhausting. And maybe that's because I am a master's runner, and I 100% feel like I'm getting to the end of my competitive training. Like, I just don't have the energy for something like this. I'm just like, no, that seems like way too much work. It seems like way too much, especially for a 10K. I don't want to do it. So I didn't. So really factor in the travel logistics once you get there and what it's all about once you get to your travel location, because that's going to be crucial too. What is so great about Indianapolis, Houston, Chicago is that the start and finish line are so close together, and there's an abundance of hotels and Airbnbs that you can stay at where it just makes it so easy, which is why I love those races. And they're also fast and they're flat and they're at lower elevation. They're typically in good times of the year. So there's a lot of plus to some of these races. Now, CIM and Mesa, those are great races too. They're point to point, but logistically, those races are awesome and they are so well run, and they have buses lined up ready to take you to the start line. Typically, anytime you're running a point to point course, you are waking up earlier because you have to factor in the travel and the logistics to get to the buses, dropping a bag off, and then driving on a bus 13.1 or 26.2 miles to get to the race start. So that can make things just a little bit longer on race morning, but just think through all of that. Also think through bib pickup. Where is bib pickup? Is it close to the hotels? Is it close to the start line? Or is it like the Chicago Marathon where you're going south of the city to pick up your bib? Now, in the Chicago Marathon episode that I've recorded, I believe it was 3 years ago when I went into, maybe it's 2 years ago, when I went into running my very first Chicago Marathon. I think it was 2 years ago. I recorded this episode and I talk about how I flew into Chicago, I Ubered to my hotel, I changed into my running clothes, and then I ran that day. I had a 4-mile run. I ran that day from my hotel down to bib pickup. I had like a credit card. I had my ID. I think I had my handheld with me. I was able to get in to the bib pickup expo area. I was able to pick up my bib. I was able to buy, I believe I bought my race tank at the expo, which highly don't recommend because I always talk about, you want to practice what you do on race day and training, and like wearing something new has the potential for something very, very wrong to go very, very wrong, something like horrible to go very, very wrong. And it ended up being like a Nike tank that I wore, and I loved it. And I thought, this is it. I wasn't super sold on my race kit. I ended up buying this tank. I loved it. I thought it was so cool. It still brings me great memories because that was one of my favorite marathons. I think it was my most favorite marathon ever. And it just brings a lot of really good memories. So I was able to buy that, but my run was completed. My bib was picked up. I secured my race kit for race day. And then I Ubered to a Whole Foods and picked up groceries for the next few days, water, gluten-free bread, like snacks, things like that. And then I Ubered back to my hotel. So in that example, you can see that I was really efficient in the things that I needed to do, especially when you're running a marathon. I think that's one of the biggest things that we overlook is efficiency on how much time on feet we're spending, how much energy we're spending when we're out and about doing all the things. And I wanted to be efficient. I already had a long travel morning. So I'm like, I need to get my first of 2 runs in before this marathon. So let's do this 4-mile run. Shake out the legs. Let's be efficient, pick up the bib, take photos. I ended up running into people that I knew at the expo, which at the Chicago Marathon, the expo was huge, which was a lot of fun. We took pictures, caught up, and got out of there, like got car service and was able to like jump around and do everything that I needed to do. I remember I was like eating like a bunch of sushi at Whole Foods. And that's also kind of like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do with like, getting food poisoning or whatever. But I remember it was like 4 o'clock Central Time and I was just like eating the biggest meal of my life. And I think that's okay too. Like your eating patterns are going to change when you're traveling. I think it's so important to just consume more when you can, because you're out and about, you're doing all the things. That can be really, really easy to forget to hydrate, to carbo load, to eat. And then you wake up the next day and you're feeling a little bit underfueled. That's like the last place that we want to be a few days out from race day. And then lastly, I want you to think about your personal goals. Is this like, I'm going to this destination to get a personal best, or am I going to this destination to make this a run vacation, to make this a super fun run? I've done a lot of Lululemon races in my day, and shout out to Lululemon. They are bringing back the Seaweeds Half Marathon. I will say it was very expensive when I ran it in 2017 and 2018. So seeing the price come through this year, it's well over $300 for this half marathon. That tracks, I think, with inflation and just how everything costs more. But what I will say is that you're in for a weekend that you will not forget. It is so much fun. You get Lulu gear, not just what they promise on their site, but if you're out and about in the right place, right time, you are getting a bunch of other free gear from Lululemon. They have yoga classes. Their expo is amazing. And they also have a really big live outdoor concert after the race. So that is such a fun race experience. I was able to participate in 2 of the half marathons and then 2 of their 10Ks. Those are super fun. Those I consider run vacations. It's probably not going to be a personal best type of situation. You're going into it to have a lot of fun with your friends or your family and just make it fun, because that's what Lululemon is, or whatever these run vacations are for you. So those are all things to consider before you travel or before you decide to travel a race. But let's say once you decide to travel a race, you will want to book your airfare and hotel as early as possible. I think that's super important. Waiting only means you're probably paying more or you're not staying near the start line, and that just adds extra stress all around. You want to give yourself an extra day before the race to shake out your legs, like the travel fatigue in your legs. So very similar to what I spoke about for the Chicago Marathon. I landed on a Friday around, I think, noon, and the race was Sunday morning. And for me, that was a perfect amount of time to shake out the legs Friday afternoon. Saturday morning, I had a shakeout with the Elevate team, 2-3 miles plus strides, and then go back to the hotel room. As hard as it is, go back to the hotel room. And I'm going to touch on that in a few minutes. You'll also want to train for the course, the altitude, the weather as best as you can in your training cycle. So if you're going into a hilly race, if you're going into maybe a race that's flat and fast and you really want to tap in to your potential, really train how you want to show up for this race. I think that's super important. If you're going to a humid climate, do your best to train in humidity. It's something for people in Colorado specifically is very difficult to train in humidity. Anytime it's a higher humid climate or I'm getting into racing in a humid environment, which also means like the temperature is maybe a little bit warmer than I want it to be, it always feels harder. So do your best to heat train, humidity train as best as you can. And then, like I mentioned earlier in my Chicago Marathon example, plan food options, grocery store runs, make restaurant reservations in advance. This is all huge because you can change your plans when you get there. And I have done that where I've had reservations at different places around town. And then it's like once you get there, once maybe your family's that comes in town or you have friends, you kind of decide like, oh, maybe this isn't the right move for today, or maybe we want to eat a little bit earlier. You have the ability to be flexible versus feeling stuck or out of luck with no options. Another really valid point is making sure your reservations are just a little bit earlier than what you want, because chances are they're going to be busy. So either you don't get seated exactly at the time that you think you will, or the kitchen could be really backed up because there are hungry, carbo loading runners all over the city, and chances are your restaurant is full of them, and you might be getting your food quite a bit later than what you think. So make those restaurant reservations in advance and a little bit earlier, 30 to 45 minutes maybe earlier than what you would typically eat. Let's talk about packing. This can be a really stressful piece to travel racing because you might think, I don't even know what I need. I literally just deleted a note that I had shared with a friend last year of like this beautiful checklist that I put together of everything that we would need for the Indianapolis Marathon. And I'm kind of in a purging season, and that was one of the things to go. And I thought, I don't want this. I don't need this. And so here we are. I don't have the travel checklist anymore. But what you want to do is think of it like a balancing act. You don't want to forget anything, but also know that the expo is probably going to have a lot of what you need if you do forget it. I think race shoes are probably going to be the one thing you don't really want to forget, because those are important and they're very personalized to the athlete. And sometimes that can be very difficult to find that particular shoe on race weekend. So I like to think about it as thinking about your long run checklist. What are the things that you bring with on your long run? You probably bring a different, like two pairs of shoes, right? You bring maybe a pair of shoes that you wear in some of your long run, and then you have your quality session in your race shoes, or you have a pair of shoes that you're changing into after the long run. So think about like two pairs of shoes, your hydration bottle, your hydration mix, all of your gels, bringing extra gels, and then think about your race kit, everything you need. I always bring two two race kits typically, because over the last few years I haven't really been sold on any of my race kits. I've been kind of lackluster, like whatever it is, what it is. So I've brought like a few different options. And sometimes that can be based on weather too, of if it could be a little bit windier, if you might need arm sleeves, if you don't need arm sleeves, maybe bring a set of arm sleeves that you can throw and toss and it's not a big deal. One of my fondest memories of my dad that I will remember for the rest of my life at the Chicago Marathon 3 years ago. It was like 46 degrees. I was in this, new Nike Aero Swift tank. And I brought a really nice pair of arm sleeves with me, thinking I was going to need them. But I saw my parents at like mile 2. And at that point, I was like, arm sleeves were an overkill. I also run warm. So, like, par for the course. So I threw them. I took them off and I threw them at my parents. And after the race, my dad was like, "Oh, hey, here, you threw this at us. Here you go." And it was one arm sleeve. And I'm like, "Hey, cool. Thanks so much. Where is the second one?" And he's like, "What? I didn't see a second one. I don't even know what this is." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I have one arm sleeve. Like, this does me no good." So it was such a funny, like, moment after running the race that I was just like, whatever, I hope someone can use that extra arm sleeve that they found on the course around mile 2. But think about all the things that you might need. Maybe sunglasses, a hat, bringing compression socks, bringing an extra pair of clothes for the, post run recovery bag. Always bring a change of shoes. That is the first thing I do, is I change out of my racing shoes into either more comfortable shoes. This year, if I participate in the Chicago Marathon, I will be bringing my canes, which have been the biggest lifesaver to me this summer. Not only are they comfortable and they make my foot feel so good right now, but they're also bubblegum pink. That is my brand color, and they make me really happy in a season where I need a lot of things, daily joy. I need anything and everything to make me smile right now. And they do that. And I also get a lot of compliments and a lot of people asking me, like, they're very curious about the shoe. What is it? Is it a Croc? What shoe is it? I also really like the color. Where did you get it? So there's like a connection aspect to it too, anytime I'm out and about. And I'm wearing that shoe. So think about all the things that you take for your long run and make a checklist. And this could be over the next few weeks of making a checklist of everything you need, everything that you use for a long run, everything you use after a long run, before a long run, and make that part of your travel checklist. And that is going to set you up for success. Just a few other quick things to think about is the sunscreen, the anti-chafe balm for sure, Band-Aids, because we might get blisters. Actually, those alpha flies, blisters all day, every day. GPS watch, obviously, but the charger is the thing that a lot of people forget. So make sure you bring your charger, and always bring extra gels. I think that's always super important. I always bring a variety of gels, and then I decide on race morning what I'm in the mood for to take. One of my biggest pro tips as a coach talking to athletes is bring a carry-on bag if you are flying to your destination, and put everything you need for race day in that carry-on bag. I have had athletes not listen to that tip and have checked a bag, and their bag has gotten lost, and they've had to buy all new things, including shoes, before their race. And not only is that expensive, it's also stressful. And what we need to do specifically for race week and race weekend is really minimize the stress. We want to minimize the cortisol that's flowing through our body. So the more that we can kind of like keep things easy and chill and relax, the better. So carry on bag with all of your essentials. This includes gels and your hydration mixes. I have traveled a lot with an entire like gallon size Ziploc bag. I am not kidding you. For anyone who has traveled with me, whether it's been a travel race or like when I go to Crested Butte, it's the same thing, or Telluride, where it's like, you know, 3, 4, I guess not three, but like 4, 5, 6 days of just like a bunch of running, a bunch of movement, a bunch of outdoor activity. You better believe I am bringing a ton of stuff to make sure I have enough. And obviously, I'm not flying to those destinations, but just recently I went home to Michigan and I was supposed to actually run and race a tune up half that weekend. I ended up not doing that because of my foot and also just not being in a place of running anything close to what I would want to run in a half marathon tune up. And when I factored that in, the race was like an hour away from where my parents live. And I also really wasn't in the mood to like have that race be the priority of the weekend. I didn't actually want anything to do with racing or having my running kind of dictate any part of my life that weekend, or really this season in life. So I ended up not doing it, but I brought this huge gallon size Ziploc bag of gels, chews, hydration mixes. Now, also, my brother in law was in Michigan with us, and we were texting back and forth and about like, you know, all the things that we were going to be doing. And I'm like, I'll bring you some scratch. So, like, I brought him some stuff and I had my Cherry Bundy little go pack. So it adds up. And lo and behold, my bag did get searched or whatever. And the lady who was searching through it, she's like, "You must be racing this weekend." And I said, "Oh, I'm not racing. I'm just training." But like, yeah, like basically. And she laughed and she was like, "Well, what are you running and what are you training for?" And I told her like possibly Chicago. And she's like, "Oh, I ran that, you know, a few times." And we talked back and forth about that. She let me go. I've never had a problem with gels or hydration getting through security. So I don't think you will either. So just know that you'll be good to go there. Now, what you want to do once you get on the flight is stay well hydrated. That's going to be the biggest component. So, coconut water, electrolyte powder, drink a lot. Do as much as you can to stay as hydrated as possible, because what we know to be true about flying is that it dehydrates us. You could wear compression socks on the plane. I definitely did this early in my travel racing days on the way back from travel, like from racing and on the flight. You want to give yourself plenty of time between your flight, getting to the expo, and race morning. The most important thing is to stay relaxed. So if that means you get in on a Friday early, like late morning, early afternoon, it's going to give you plenty of time to get a shakeout run in, get to the grocery store, go to the expo, eat dinner, chill, stay relaxed. Like, I know some people can't help this, like they'll fly in the night before a race or the afternoon of a race, and it creates a lot of extra stress, because if your flight is delayed, there's a lot of races now that won't let anyone else pick up your bib. And if you miss the expo and the expo cutoff time, let's say they close at 6, you're unable to race because they don't have race morning pickup in a lot of these really big races. So it's really important to just really think through the logistics of your travel. And I also want you to think about pre-race activities. Please keep these to a minimum if you are going for a personal best. If you're going for a friends weekend, have at it. I went to the San Diego Lululemon 10K in 2019 with my friend Tiffany. We also went to the Houston Lululemon 10K in that was 2022, and we had so much fun. We were eating tacos left and right. We were consuming margaritas. I think we had like 30,000 steps the day before this 10K race, I think I actually did end up racing it because it was like part of my CIM build, but I didn't know any better. I was very young to racing and running and training. And I was like, whatever. And I was so relaxed. And there's a part of me that's like, I really want to go back to that of just like living life and jumping into racing and see what happens. But it all kind of depends on what you're looking for, right? If you're going for that personal best, if you are going for a really strong effort, really limit sightseeing until after the race. Low impact activities are great, but understand that it's still a stimulus. You're still out in public, you're still exerting energy. And so that is going to play into your race. And so when you look back and you think, oh yeah, I didn't feel extra peppy in this race, it could be that low impact activity that you spent all day doing the day before and you were out in the sun and et cetera, et cetera. So the year I ran Chicago in 22, I love the city of Chicago. It brings back a lot of great memories for me as a kid growing up and as a family together. And I love that city so much. And I had so many friends in town who were racing, who were there to cheer me on. And after the shakeout on that Saturday, I told people, like, I'm going back to my hotel room. If you want to see me, I'll be in the lobby between these 2 hours, like I think it was like from 12 to 2, come down, like come to the lobby, let's hang out. And I kept it super chill. And it was so hard because on Instagram, I was seeing everyone else who felt like everyone else who was racing Chicago out and about doing all the things. And I thought, this race really means something to me. It was my very first race back with Nell, and she was, we really wanted to have like a strong day. And the last few marathons that I had run weren't as strong as they could have been. And I really just wanted to have a great day. So I ended up kind of holding myself in this hotel room, in this hotel for the day before the race, but it turned out really well. It's one of my favorite marathons to date. I ran a negative split race. I felt super strong. I ran out of runway. I got to see family and friends along the course. Like, it was the best. It was the absolute best. If it could be like half of that this year, if I end up going, I will be a very grateful, happy human. So think about your pre-race activities and then also post-race activities, because like I have room on the backside of the marathon this year to be able to do all the things that I'm not going to do maybe before the race if I am racing it. So think about that, like the before, the after, what you can do or limit before the race. If you're going after that personal best, if you're going out there for fun, add it. Drink the margaritas, please, please, please. Do all the things, have a lot of fun, and soak up the memories, and yeah, just have a lot of fun. Now, if you're traveling with friends and family, I think it's super important to communicate your expectations, whether you want to be in the hotel the day before the race or you want to be out and about having fun, going to a Cubbies game, like having a beer, going out and just having fun. Communicate that, set the expectations. I think that's really important. Anyone who has considered traveling with me for a race or have traveled with me for a marathon, they're very, very surprised at how well I do after racing, because I will typically kind of like keep things super low key the day before a marathon. Like, I will be watching movies, I will be in recovery boots, I will be eating a dinner at 4 p.m. and a second, very small dinner at 7 p.m. and I'm going to bed and whatever. But after the race, after the marathon, the gloves come off, the recovery shoes come on, and it's like, I will do anything. I will walk all over town. I will eat. I will drink. I will be out and about. The last thing I want to do is be in a hotel room. That's how I spent my very first marathon. I mean, I was wrecked. And then I remember there was a big group of people that were there that I knew, and they were all out and about, like having drinks and celebrating. And I was like, I don't even know how you could do that. But now that I'm like 7 marathons in, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a skill. You learn it over time. And it's probably the most fun because you're exhausted. You're so elated. It doesn't even matter really the outcome of the race. And you're just out there having fun and celebrating the training and being with friends. And there's going to be so many people in Chicago that whether I race or not, it's going to be an amazing weekend. But it always surprises people how I show up in that moment because it's very different from how I am before the race and, in some ways, how I am in training or how I was in training. You want to enjoy the race expo, but you don't want to spend too much time walking around. So keep that kind of in the back of your mind. If there are speakers or athletes that you want to listen to, maybe make sure you're there at the time that they're there, picking up your bib and kind of like making it one joint effort as you go out versus going back and forth to and from the hotel and the expo multiple times. And then you also want to focus on getting quality sleep the week of the race. 2 nights before the race is the most important. I think most of us know that, but the more and more sleep you can get during race week, absolutely the better. And then race morning, you want to lay out all your race gear, make sure you have it all ready to go. You don't want to forget anything. I've had athletes text me at 6 a.m. Eastern time telling me that they forgot their gels in their hotel room. And I'm seeing it like when I wake up, which is 4 a.m. Mountain time on a Sunday. I'm seeing it when I wake up and it's like, well, like, hopefully you can bum some gels off of other athletes who maybe have extras or the race, typically will have gels too. But lay everything out so you don't forget it. Give yourself plenty of time to get to the start. I think that's important. Something I really notice in hotels, especially race hotels, is the elevators take a really long time. And if you're heading down to the lobby for coffee and then you're heading back up to the room to continue getting ready, and then you're heading down to the lobby to go to the start line, that is 3 sets of elevators that you have to work through. And it could take minutes to get an elevator. I have been in hotels like that. So really give yourself more time than what you think, because there's going to be nuances and different things that kind of pop up that morning that you're not thinking about that will just take extra time because that hotel is full of runners doing the exact same thing as you. That could even mean using the microwave in the lobby, using the toaster, things like that. Everyone's doing it. So you got to factor in more time. And then post race morning or post race, like after the race, you want to have a plan on where to meet your friends and family. I think that's super important. Have that celebration meal, have a lot of fun, be extra, maybe be, a totally different type of athlete or human than you were in training. I think that's so fun. And just like, celebrate it, right? Bring a bag with you, check a bag that has all your recovery gear, have the recovery shoes, have maybe a different tank top, a hoodie if you need it, a different hat, things like that. You can always go back to the hotel and shower and then go out again, which is typically what I do, but sometimes it's nice to have something different, especially on your feet as you walk back to the hotel. And what we know to be true about Chicago and all the majors is that it's a good mile, maybe outside of Boston, but New York and Chicago, it's a good mile after you cross the finish line before you get out of the race environment and before you can even think about getting back to your Airbnb or hotel. So that is what I have for you today. I think the most important thing is if you are travel racing this fall is that, think ahead, plan ahead, but also have a lot of fun. Make sure if it is a city that you want to sightsee and you want to explore and you want to check out that new restaurant that you've heard so many great things about, do it. You're there, but be strategic with it. If you're going after a personal best, be strategic with all of it. I think it's all a balancing act. It's definitely something that you can be a bit more protected in your energy before the race. And then after the race, go have at it, have fun, have those margaritas and just have so much fun. And maybe you're an athlete too that doesn't participate in drinking alcohol. I know that that is becoming more and more popular. And I don't want to send that message of like, your reward is alcohol after working hard. But I know sometimes it can be just a really nice way to relax after a race. So find what works for you. Maybe that's NA drinks, or maybe that's going out and getting coffee or a big breakfast or just hanging out in the hotel, like whatever. Everyone's going to be so different in that way. But as long as it fills your cup, that's what's most important. So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I'd love to hear from you. What else would you add to this? And Are you travel racing this fall? I want to know, where are you going? What are you doing? All those things. Feel free to send me an email at Sarah, SARA, at elevateyourrunning.com. And hey, if you're looking for a running coach to help you elevate your running, elevate your training, achieve those goals, whether it's personal best or learning how to be strategic in training and slowing down those runs and building fitness, building that aerobic foundation, the Elevate Your Running coaches are here for you. Haley, Amber, and myself, we all have spaces open for 2026, and you can find more information on our coaching services at elevateyourrunning.com. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you have a fantastic week.